here's the thing. This is what this chapter and verse is all about. This verse is all about is that when we lose our first love, things that used to make us excited no longer makes us excited. The thing that used to make us want to wake up in the morning and spend time together, it's no longer there.
We don't chase greatness. Yeah. We build it. One choice. One step. One day at a time. You're listening to Legacy in Motion. Where faith meets purpose. And purpose becomes legacy. Becomes legacy.
And good afternoon, good morning, good day, whatever time you're looking at this. And welcome to Legacy in Motion. I'm excited to be able to share these devotional thoughts, current event thoughts, whatever is reflecting on my mind at this time with you. And hopefully, I want you to log in and also just click and follow me throughout this journey as we journey together. Today, we're going to be talking about an excerpt from my book, Legacy in Motion, My First Love. Now, what does legacy in motion mean to me? I mean, many times when we think of the word legacy, we think of what we've left behind, how people remember us. But I look at it differently. I look at it as in motion. Legacy is what we are building, is who we're connecting with, who we're impacting, who impacts us. And our lives are creating ripple effects throughout whomever we come in contact with. And that ripple effect is like a wave that it starts in a spot. When you throw a stone into a lake, you see the ripple, and the ripple continues throughout the entire length and breadth of the lake. And the waves are like that. Then those ripples become waves. And so we don't know exactly how we're impacting others. Our legacy is constantly in motion, constantly moving, constantly shaping, and will shape others beyond our immediate vicinity because we affect others through people who we come in contact with. So legacy in motion means a lot to me. So this is why I chose it as the title of my book. And I'm going to be talking today to you about the first chapter of my book. It's called My First Love, My First Love. And it's based on Revelation 2, 1 through 7. And we talk about what happens when we first fall in love with Christ, when we first are saved, when we first recognize that who Christ is to us. We fall in love, and we want to spend time in study, time in prayer, time in fellowship, time in worship. But over time, sometimes that fades. I remember when I was a young man, one of my favorite movies was West Side Story. And one of the scenes in the story, the musical numbers in the story is when Tony met Maria. And when he met Maria, he sang this song, which resonates with me since then. He said, "Maria, Maria, I just met a girl named Maria, the most beautiful word I've ever heard, Maria." That's what it's like to fall in love for the first time. That's what it's like to have that feeling of completeness. And when that happens, your outlook on life changes. The way you see the world changes. The way you see yourself changes. Because Tony was embroiled, you know the story, and it was in a difficult life. He had just gotten out of jail. He was living in a contentious neighborhood with different gangs vying for control over ethnicity and differences in culture. But when he met Maria, which was a girl from the competing culture, his life changed. The same way when we meet Jesus for the first time, our life changes. We see things differently. It doesn't mean that we stop necessarily feeling some of those things. Some of those challenges in life are still there. Tony was still living in the community of conflict, still living, with the residue of the things that he had done before in his life, but yet his outlook on life had changed. And that's what it means that when we have our first love, we find our first love, it changes us. But here's the thing, this is what chapter and verse is all about. This verse is all about, is that when we lose our first love, things that used to make us excited no longer makes us excited. The thing that used to make us want to wake up in the morning and spend time together is no longer there. And what does the word ask us to do? How do we respark that first love? It says, return to the things that you did at first. So what did we do at first? We spent time together. What did we do at first? We fellowship together. What did we do at first? We spent time with Christ and studying His Word. What did we do at first? We spent time with that special someone, as much time as you can, whether it was just on the phone or walking down the street or sitting in a cafe or going to the movies or going shopping. What all those things was how you manifest your love. When those things start to become mundane, when walking in the mall is no longer a wonderful experience, when going to the movies is no longer a wonderful experience, when sitting down to a simple meal is no longer a wonderful experience, that's when you know your first love is starting to wane. And the same thing in our faith walk. When we find it hard to get up in the morning, it's time for worship. It's time to go into the house of worship and fellowship, and you no longer feel that energy. You'd rather do something else. Just maybe your first love is starting to wane. And how do we resolve that? And that's the question that we have to ask ourselves. And that's what the text says here: return to those things which you did at first. Return to those things which you did at first. And so when we return to spending time with Christ, when we return to spending time in prayer, when we are intentional about our devotional time, not just something to do for the sake of checking off a box, but just something to do just for you to spend time with God, with His Word, in prayer, in reflection, in meditation. You could just be walking around the block. You could be on your bike like I do. You could be just sitting in your chair somewhere or in your car and just spend time, and you'll find yourself once again rekindling that spark. Just spend time. You'll find yourself rekindling that spark. So I'm going to give you a few questions that I want you to reflect on in terms of what you can think about in terms of how you can rekindle your first love. One of the things first question I'm going to ask you is what for you to reflect on is, what was your personal road to Damascus experience? And we know the story of Saul on the road to Damascus, where he met Christ. What was that moment where you met Christ? And remember that feeling. Just reflect back on that and how that made you feel. Did you cry? Were you happy? Were you joyous? Did you lift your hands in praise? What was that? What did you do? Remember that and go back to that. The second thing is, have you been filled with the Holy Spirit, or have you only been repented without transformation? It's one thing to say, yes, I believe. But have you really, has that transformed the way you see yourself? Not the way you see the world, because the world is the world, but the way you see yourself, or you recognize that you are a child of God. And then the last question I want you to reflect on is, what distractions and traditions have replaced your first love? What has come into your life that has been, it could be work, it could be good things. And the things that come into our lives are not necessarily bad things. The things that come into our lives are just things. And sometimes those things become so important to us that it drives and it sheds away, pushes away our first love. You get into a relationship, and next to you get to work, or you have to go to work, and you're working long hours, and then you find yourself drifting apart, or you have to do something that takes you away all the time, or maybe the finances gets a little tight and frustration builds that takes away that love. Maybe the children get in the way, and you're spending more time with the children than you are together, or doing activities with the children than you are together. Those are good things, and those things can also drain you of your first love. So we ought to recognize that we ought to see things that can pull us away from each other and also pull us away from Christ, and find a way to put those things into their proper place, because they're not necessarily bad things. but they're just things that in life that can sometimes crowd out our first love, crowd out the things in our lives that are important to us, crowd out the time that we want to spend together, crowd out those moments of just devotional time, or those moments of just intimacy with your loved one. That's how we can rekindle our first love. Go back to that first date. Go back to that first encounter. Go back to that first moment and remember that feeling. And try to rekindle and recreate that feeling and see and watch and see that first love rekindled in your life.